watching the India development debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. An uneasy calm has prevailed over northeast Delhi with no major incidents of rioting reported today. The death toll has gone up to 37 with over 200 injured. The big story, though, has become also a controversy over the transfer of a Delhi High Court judge, the same one who took a stringent position on the Delhi police not filing FIRs against political leaders who've allegedly made inflammatory remarks that could have instigated the violence. We will be looking at that legal aspect ahead on the show. Today on the show, we're also talking about the big telecom story. Telecom Association COAI has written to the government asking for relief in AGR dues. I will be speaking to COAI Chief Rajan Mathews. That's an exclusive. We're also discussing the markets that have fallen for the fifth consecutive session, gripped among other things by coronavirus fears. All of that coming up, but let's begin with an IDD exclusive. Telecom operators have reached out to the government with a list of demands seeking relief a day before a high-level meet that will discuss the future course of action in the Department of Telecom. A Supreme Court verdict nearly 5 months ago has set in motion a chain of events which include a recovery of hefty dues from Indian telecom companies, with Vodafone Idea and Bharti Airtel having to pay the largest amount. In fact, after that, Vodafone Idea has also said that if it has no relief, it may have to shut shop. The Cellular Operators Association of India, or the COAI, has now written to the Department of Telecom with a list of relief measures ranging from a 15-year tenure to settle dues, a 3-year moratorium on interest penalties and interest on penalties, among other things. Joining me now to speak on some of these demands and explain to us what's going on in this sector is Rajan Mathews, Director General of the COAI. Mr. Mathews, thank you so much for speaking to us on ET Now. Let me begin by asking you about this letter which has been sent out today to the Department of Telecom with a various list of relief measures. How dire is the situation right now for the industry?
So first of all, the situation is very, very dire because obviously with the AGR payments, just about all of the liquidity from two of the major operators has been sucked out. Airtel has had to make a substantial payment. Vodafone has made payments and is looking to make further payments. So with all of that money going out of the industry, and in addition, 30+% of every top line revenue amount still is going back to the government because of continuing AGR. That is not a sustainable proposition for the industry, and that is why we're going back to the government, because all of these tremendous amounts of payments are all going back to the government. And so unless the government gives back the relief to the industry, this industry is going to find it very, very difficult to continue to proceed further.
So, Mr. Mathews, among the many things that have been listed out in this communication is a request for GST offset. Why don't you begin part one by telling me how that will work in your view? And also another question where you're asking for the whole AGR format of counting taxes and penalties, etc., to be changed forthwith. Now, AGR was part of the initial agreements and contracts that telecom industry and telecom companies signed with the government. Can you really ask to change it now?
So on the first point, in terms of the offset of GST, this is really one pocket of the government moving to another pocket of the government. The government owes the industry over 35,000 crore rupees worth of refunds in terms of unused GST. So all we are saying is that instead of those sitting there unused, can you please offset that against some of the other liabilities from the industry? That is one of the requests that we've made. The second part that you raised in terms of AGR is a prospective process. So we are not saying tamper with the Supreme Court order. We're saying two things. One, since the Supreme Court order is in place, give us debt financing to be able to repay this amount over some period in time. We've made the payments in conformity with the Supreme Court order. Fine. Can you now turn around and give us a back end, if you will, loan process in the terms that are outlined in our letter? And again, this is because, this is prospective, has nothing to do with impacting the Supreme Court order. So I think it's very feasible vis-a-vis the license terms and conditions, and the DOT is well within its rights to prospectively modify, change terms in the license condition as it has done in previous times.
Well, there's also been a demand for license fee reduction, and quite a hefty one, from 8% to 3%. License fees are a huge revenue stream for the government of India. Are you really optimistic that this demand will be met, or they will listen to this?
We are optimistic. Why? Because please understand that of the 8%, 5% is what we call the USOF fund, which is the amounts of money that have been taken from the industry in order to help with uncovered areas like our rural areas. So what we are suggesting is that this 56,000 crore rupees worth of unused, previously collected USOF money, which accounts for 5% of that 3%, right? 8%, 5% USOF money. We're saying it's sitting there unused. Why do you want to continue to collect this money? Because if you leave it with the industry is going to use that principally to enhance and expand the marketplace and the rural penetration, much as it has done previously. So that is the rationale for reducing it from the present 8% to the 3%. And we think it's very, very feasible, because obviously the government has got a substantial windfall, which we believe perhaps was unplanned for, certainly in terms of the penalty and the interest on the penalty amount. And so there is enough adequate financial wherewithal within the government to afford this type of adjustment to the industry.
You know, many experts believe that the deferment of these AGR penalties, etc., and the deferment of those payments will only kick the can down the road for the telecom sector, which is plagued with a lot of endemic issues. What needs to change for the telecom industry in India to actually survive?
A good point that you bring up. What we have always been saying is that the AGR is a remnant of the old pay-as-you-go scheme, which is what we call the revenue share, which was in place when the industry did not pay upfront for the license or the spectrum. Today, as a result of the Supreme Court order previously saying that all spectrum had to be auctioned, the industry is paying upfront 100% for all of that spectrum as well as for the license. So in that situation, the anomaly of continuing the old legacy process of the AGR is clearly anomalous. So what we are suggesting is, one, prospectively again, we either eliminate AGR, or two, redefine AGR much along the ways that has been suggested by the TRAI and the industry. So that is one. And then on that new base, please apply a lower license fee and spectrum usage charge as we've requested in the letter. This AGR has created a lot of confusion. It has created a lot of heartburn for the industry because of the lack of clarity in terms of how it is to be applied, including all revenue, which has also snared other PSUs. So we're saying, going forward, please fix this once and for all so that the industry and the rest of the PSUs can get on an equal footing.
You know, this process started in October last year with the Supreme Court order. It's 5 months later and we're still going through this back and forth of what the industry wants and what the government can do to alleviate concerns. Do you think that the Department of Telecom has been slow to respond to these concerns even after 5 months?
So in terms of the response being slow, I think the resolve and the resolution should have really happened before this whole thing went to the Supreme Court. Please remember that the TD SAT gave a very appropriate, in our mind, ruling that non-telecom revenue should not be included in adjusted gross revenue definition. And the TRAI, which is our regulator, also supported that particular definition. Unfortunately, the DOT chose to appeal this all the way to the Supreme Court. Even in that context, the DOT obviously has been delaying because they were concerned that any further move once the Supreme Court gave its order would be tantamount to, being going against the court order and contempt of court, which in a sense has already happened. So that was the nervousness from the DOT perspective. So the point I'm making is that there was a period in time when the DOT clearly could have adopted the TDSAT ruling and the TRAI ruling, not taken it to the Supreme Court. Now that it has taken it to the Supreme Court and gotten a verdict, we are suggesting that the way forward is much as we've suggested in our letter: redefine AGR, reduce license fee, reduce spectrum charges, and give us a debt package that will help us repay the tremendous amount of money that is now owed to the government.
Another view is that there may have been a bit of overreaction or a bit of pressing the panic button by the industry. Is it really such a grave situation? What happens if the government does not give some relief to the telecom sector and doesn't go through? Could Voda Idea really shut shop?
So the first point, when you say that the panic button has been pressed, really, let's look at the fact of the situation. By the way, this letter is a unanimous letter based on inputs from Jio, Airtel, and Voda Idea. So the whole industry today is asking for this particular type of relief from the government because of the substantial amount of monies which are going to the government. So that's the first point. The second point, in terms of you talking about the panic button, please understand the tremendous amount of wealth that has been destroyed and the number of very great international players that have left the Indian market because of these particular situations. Telenor has left, Docomo has left, Aircel has closed shop, Arcom has closed shop, Tata Telecom has decided to sell. Look at the tremendous number of world-class companies that do operations well, having abandoned their whole position in the telecom space. If that's not, in a sense, something that needs to be addressed by the government, I don't know what is. If this had happened in any other industry, I believe the government would have been much, much quicker in terms of responding to save the industry.
Well, a big meeting tomorrow. We'll wait and see what happens. And of course, we're tracking that story right here on ET Now. But meanwhile, thank you so much, Mr. Rajan Mathews, for speaking with us.